Rightio. Hi everyone. The last session I'm going to put you through of this sprint. Thanks everyone for sticking with it. Hope you've all learned something. I've certainly learned a lot on n8n. It forced me to forced me to go and grapple with a bunch of stuff that I didn't really know very well. I've still got a lot to learn, but I know a lot more than I did. Hey guys. I thought what we do today is I just want to share some thoughts on knowledge curation, which sort of in my mind sits at the top of the funnel. Last week we talked about how to create writing in our own style using style guides as a concept, where what we did was we took exemplars of historical writing that we've done and used that along with a meta prompt to produce a style guide that we could reuse that would help an AI have the context to be able to produce writing that sounded more consistent with historical writing that we had done. And sort of upstream from writing, like what are we going to write about? What ideas are we going to share? What valuable thing do we have to say to the world? And that's really where I think knowledge curation comes in. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I want to introduce you to this concept of structured outputs, which I think is one of the hidden powers of LLMs that not a lot of people are really making enough use of, in my view. Effectively, how do we take unstructured information, use the power of LLMs to turn it into structured information? So that's like taking unstructured content that we find and turning that into structured knowledge that we can database and then reuse. Then I'd love to save like sort of half an hour, 40 minutes at the end, or about half an hour at the end for a bit of show and tell, because I know people in this room have been implementing a lot of what we've been learning, and it would be great to do a quick show and tell if we've got it. Is there anyone who would volunteer for a quick show and tell at the end? Awesome, thank you, all of you. Okay, knowledge curation. So if we go back to our sort of North Star direction that we're sort of moving in terms of how do we use agents and AI capability to produce valuable artifacts for us in a way that we can do this better, cheaper, and faster. We can have AIs working for us when we're asleep, when we're away from our computers, etc. Producing the things that make the world of business go around: budgets, proposals, emails, reports, etc. The actual tool use increasingly being done by our agents and not by us individually. And where we move up to being more of the orchestrator of the agents rather than the tool using monkeys down there. Now, a key part of this is obviously ideas, curation, taste, oversight. And that's really what I want to talk about today, is the sort of knowledge in knowledge work. If we think about what a company really is, a company is a collection of people who bring with them unique knowledge. And what the company does or needs to do is take that knowledge that people have, the staff, and turn that into valuable products and services for customers. At the simplest level, that's what a company is. It's made up of people who have knowledge, who get knowledge from different places that we'll talk about in a second. And the company's job is to harness that knowledge, turn it into valuable products and services. Now, how do we create new knowledge? We all have knowledge from our studies, from our experience historically, from working, but we create new knowledge on a day-to-day basis. And I think part of this shift in how we work is that we need to get better at identifying the fact that we do create a lot of knowledge, but a lot of that knowledge has sort of fallen by the wayside, leaked, not being captured, and that the new tools and technology that we have in AI allows us to capture that knowledge in a far more effective way than we've done historically. So if you think about how we capture knowledge or create new knowledge on a day-to-day basis, it's the shower thoughts that sort of form from inspirational exposure that we've had historically. It might have been that morning, might have been what we watched on TV last night, whatever it might be. It's the conversations and meetings that we have. It's the podcasts that we listen to, the videos that we watch, the web pages and articles that we read, the books we might be reading, and social media. There might be others that's not necessarily exhaustive, but all of these things are producing new knowledge for us. You know, we watch a how-to or a tutorial on YouTube, or we attend an event, or we have a conversation with somebody over lunch, and it precipitates new thoughts and ideas. And we just need to use the fact that we have AI now to capture that much more effectively than previously. That stuff all just went off in the ether. We might have retained a small amount of it, but we weren't able to effectively harness that knowledge. We now have tools to do that. So where we want to get to is we don't want that stuff to just leak. We want those ideas to be captured. We want to get them into a knowledge base of some kind so that we can then expose that to intelligence. We can expose that to AI to help us create value from the knowledge that we're just ambiently continuing to create through consumption and sort of processing of information. So if we go back to our fundamental context engineering model that we've been talking about for the last 5 weeks, where what the LLM does is predict the series of tokens that if we can engineer the right context going into the LLM, in other words, if we can put the right tokens in here, we can start to predict more and more valuable tokens out the other end that turn into things like valuable documents, new proposals, all the sort of valuable artifacts that we talked about on the previous slide. So in this model where we're effectively capturing the knowledge that we're developing on a day-to-day basis, where we can get to here is this model where we're able to question that knowledge base or give instructions to that knowledge base, use the RAG concept that we learned about in the sprint, where we can retrieve and augment the generation of these tokens so that we can produce useful artifacts out the other end. So that's kind of what we're seeking to move towards. Effective capture, and then exposing this, making our knowledge legible to intelligence, so we can throw this incredible intelligence engine at the knowledge that we've been building up to produce useful things out the other end. We've got a couple of tables here. I'm not going to go through them in detail, but I thought these are useful notes to think about. It's kind of like the from to, you know, the pre-AI. You read an article, forget the key insight a week later. You watch a lecture, forget to recall the details. Listen to a podcast, the ideas vanish on your commute, and so on and so forth. Have a great idea in a conversation, but don't write it down. We now have these AI-enabled tools that let us capture that information much more effectively. And some of you are really starting to do that, and it's amazing to hear those stories. The people that are using meeting recorders and transcribers, people that are sort of, you know, religiously bookmarking videos and podcasts and things that they watch, and then transcribing them and turning those into knowledge. And that really does allow for some very interesting and valuable new impact. You know, the ability to query your knowledge base and find relevant stuff that you've read, the ability to take all those, you know, very, very useful long-form podcasts and get access to wisdom really quickly that can then inform whatever product strategies, ideas, and so forth. And then similarly for company, you know, all of those meetings, just like the amount of leakage of good ideas and knowledge that gets created in a meeting over the years that just totally leaked. We now have the ability to record those things, to turn them into valuable structured information, and then expose them to AI to be able to help us turn that into valuable outputs. I thought Ryan gave a really great talk on this in Sprint 2. I've linked it here on the deck. You know, Ryan runs Chunky Duck. It's a digital marketing agency, but really it's a highly systematized, distributed team that I think are using knowledge capture extremely well, and I think he's got a very good template for it. He tends to use Notion as the knowledge base. The reason he likes it, and I think there's strong merit to this, is that pretty much all of these consumption interfaces have good native integrations with Notion. So adding tweets to Notion, or a Notion Clipper as a bookmarklet to be able to quickly add articles, websites, etc. to your Notion, and many others that people have built over the last few years, means that you can quickly take stuff that you're consuming and add it to your Notion database. And then once you've done that, of course, we can then start to expose that to AI. So with Claude and ChatGPT now, you've got access from your daily sort of chat, your daily AI assistant has access to your Notion. So if you've spent the time to capture that knowledge into your Notion, you now can sit in your AI assistant. It has access to that knowledge, and it can start to use that in whatever tasks you give it. And then, of course, as we've been learning over the last few weeks, that's all fantastic in the sense that we're in productivity mode and we're sitting here working on our computers. But we want, really, if we're going to kind of like free up our time and not just continue adding to the sort of production load, we really want to get our AIs in the cloud doing more and more work for us. And the good news is that platforms like n8n, Zapier, etc., already have first-class support for Notion, where you can give that as a tool to your AI agent, and whatever triggers you're using, your AI agent is able to dip into your knowledge base, get relevant information, and use that to produce the outputs. Everything I've said about Notion applies to a range of other tools, Airtable, Google Sheets if you really want, many other sort of databases or cloud-based knowledge bases. But yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to say about encouraging us all to sort of change that way that we work. If we're not already doing it, I still have a lot to do myself to really just get to the point where I have frictionless knowledge capture. It's happening the whole time. I don't have to sort of go back and check, did I capture this or whatever. I just know it's, if I read something, I find it interesting, I hit a little button. For me, I read a lot on X. I just like a post. Minutes later, I know it is in my knowledge base. And then where I'm trying to get to is I'm trying to have a series of agents that will then work on that knowledge that I capture in the background. So it might summarize it, it might think about turning that into valuable ideas that I might be able to use, where I'm not having to do that deliberately myself. That's just happening ambiently in the background. So yeah, it's more a call to action to say, I think it would be fantastic to do another sprint in the future where people share how they are solving that problem, how they're capturing their knowledge, how they're processing that knowledge, and how they're turning that into valuable artifacts. One of the important things that leads on from that is the ability to create structured knowledge from unstructured content. And I want to show you in n8n how we do that. It's not a feature of n8n, it's a feature of LLMs. The fact that we're able to say to them, here is some unstructured content. Let's just say it's an article that we've read. Here's some unstructured content. Here is a structure that I would like you to derive from the unstructured content. Please work on it and produce a structured output so that I can stick that in my database. My database, of course, has tables, rows, columns, and structure. And I want to take unstructured content that was not developed to neatly fit into my database, perform this bit of computation on it, turn it into a structure that allows me to build up valuable structured data that I can query and I can use in different ways. A lot of you are doing this. I'm thinking of things like Simon with Budgetly, Simon's taking, you know, messy PDFs that are PDFs or even photos of receipts and expenses, providing a structured format that says this is the format that we need you, LLM, to produce for us. We want you to analyze this, use your vision, use your OCR, use all of your LLM capabilities. This is the output format that we want. And then at the other end, you're able to get these structured outputs that, for example, will take, you know, a relatively messy photograph of a receipt from Kohl's, or a relatively or even a well-organized invoice from someone, conform it to a consistent structure. Well, say what structure we want, have the LLM work its magic to predict the tokens that produce the structured output that we can then feed into our database. So a lot of AI companies now, that's effectively what they do. They have prompts and tools and particular sort of content formats or data formats. They take unstructured information, they give it a sort of target schema or target data format, use the LLM to produce that in a way that previously a human would have had to manually do. If you think about, you know, humans having to manually key in expense receipts and so forth, there's multiple startups that just exist to do that now. And then once we have that output, we can just program with using normal software to get that into the database and then do all sorts of downstream things from there. So let's learn how to do this quickly. We'll jump into n8n. And by now everyone knows how to do this. We're going to create a new AI agent workflow. Use a chat trigger as a starting point. Each week my n8n instance gets slower and slower as more people use it. All right, so we're going to create a chat trigger node. This could be any trigger, but for the purposes of demonstration, we'll start with this. We'll create a chat trigger node. We're going to create an AI agent. Agent. We're going to add our open router model. Just going to use my trusty GPT 4.1 mini. And that's our general starting point, which we've been doing over the last few weeks. Those of you that don't have access to n8n on my little instance here, there's a process to do it, but it'll probably take a little bit long. So if you just want to jump in the hosted free version, you're welcome to follow along, or just make a note of the stuff and you can follow up. Okay, so we've got an inbound chat message here. We've got our AI agent. We've given it a brain in the form of GPT 4.1 mini. Could be other models. Not all models are good at taking unstructured and conforming it to a structured output. The key thing we're doing differently this time that we haven't done in previous weeks is we're toggling this on. Require specific output format. And then when we click out of this, what you'll see is there's a new connection point here for an output parser. Parsing is where we take data and we put it through an algorithm. So in this instance, what we're going to do is we're going to parse the outputs. So if we click on this, you'll see it already limits to these three output parsers. Choose structured output parser. And then this is the sort of bog standard example JSON that it gives you. We're just going to make one small change to that. For the purposes of demonstration, we're just going to say, we're not going to make it cities, we're going to just make it city. Now, for those that don't know what we're looking at here, JSON is a format for structuring data in a plain text, and I think relatively easy to understand format. What we have here is a JSON object, and we have key value pairs. So we have the key being the state, we have the state being California, we have the key being the city, we have the value being Los Angeles, and what we have is a comma separator between those two items. If we added more, we would have a comma separator, but you wouldn't have a comma at the end of the last item in an object. I won't go into a detailed session on JSON, but in the same way we've been learning about Markdown, I think JSON, if you're going to be building with AI and doing sort of more complex things, is a fundamental literacy that everyone should learn. It's not difficult to learn, and what's really nice about it is if you can learn how to use it, you can start to very quickly sit down and map out a data structure for your own data. So, you know, you might think, oh, I've got this product idea. I'm imagining the relationship between, you know, tables in a database and how my information is organized. If you know how to use JSON, you can basically just sit down and very quickly map it out in a JSON structure. Again, the easiest way to learn this is just to jump into ChatGPT. Let me just quickly demonstrate this. You now have this incredible new capability here called Study and Learn. Everyone see this? Launched 2 weeks ago. Basically, it's in the background. All it actually is, they've launched a whole product just with a prompt. And this prompt uses the Socratic tutoring method. I'm going to say, teach me all about JSON. Okay, and it's going to lead me through an interactive, step-by-step process where it's going to teach me all about JSON. We're not going to go through that lesson, but this is a great way to learn stuff now. Okay, so what we're saying is that we're going to put a chat input in, and we're going to say to the LLM, we want you to produce an output that conforms with this JSON schema. In this instance, the keys remain constant, but these values are simply just examples. So think of this like a prompt. We're basically saying to it, in the prompt, this is the format that we want you to output. It knows, it's smart enough to know that it'll keep these, but depending on the input, this is the real gold. It's going to give us something different out the other end. This is a very simple JSON structure, but this could be far more complicated. Think about an accounting system with expenses, for example. You know, it would have date, it would have vendor, it would have amount, GST, description. All sorts of different things would be listed down here in a JSON structure. Again, you could just quickly jump into ChatGPT and say, create me an example JSON schema for parsing an invoice or an expense claim, and it'll give you an example of that. And then you can come and use it in here. But for the purpose of demonstration, we're going to just do a fun little a chat and see how this works. Any questions so far on what's going on here? Think of this just as part of the prompt. We're telling the LLM, we only want you to reply with this structure. Because of course, if you give us the structure, we can then programmatically assume, or we can assume that we're getting a structured output. We can then feed into a series of steps downstream without needing a human or manual sort of inspection of them. So let's come out of that. So now we have our brain, we have our structured output, we have our little chat thing here. And the fun demo I did earlier was just typing in some song lyrics and seeing if it could pick it up. What don't we have? We haven't told this AI agent what it's got to do. So for that, of course, we need a system message. You're a helpful assistant. We'll keep this very simple. Your job is to identify places from unstructured inputs and produce structured outputs per the provided schema, or something to that effect. So your job is to identify places from unstructured inputs and produce structured outputs per the provided schema. Schema being the little JSON example that we provided to it. Okay, I'm gonna try some song lyrics here and see if we can figure out. Okay, so you can see, I didn't even tell it what the place was. It was able to derive correctly leash keys, state and city, and provide a structured output here. So it didn't give me a whole lot of preamble, didn't give me a whole lot of post-amble, just gave me the structured output, which I could have a downstream node now basically take that and chuck it straight into a database. And instead of having a chat message, I could be feeding it a whole list of data that I wanted to process for me item by item by item by item by item. Think of that as like a data cleaning or data cleansing process, where I might have 500 articles. It's just going to iterate one by one, pass it through, give it to a cheap model, and produce structured outputs out the other end that I can then chuck in my database. Something that a human data analyst would previously have had to do in a very painstaking way. It's not easy to write, natural language processing algorithms that are just going to go through and figure out, cities and states from articles. Okay, has everyone got that? Can I help? Can I help anyone? Managed to get that all right? Tested with a few other things. And then I'm just going to quickly show you here in terms of how you would use this in a downstream. I'm just going to use the set field here. And what you can see is what we're getting from the previous step is this output here with structured fields. What that lets me do is it lets me bring that structured field into the next step in my workflow. So for example, here I can just drag, I could say something like, the state is, and the city is, or I could have done, let me just quickly do this. Okay, so I can turn this into a CSV. So just to show you how you would do that. So you're going to put your header row in your CSV. state, city. And now what I'm getting is, I'm getting a CSV that I could be piping into all sorts of downstream systems, databases, et cetera, So you can see what I did there was, I'm sort of creating I've gone from taking a structured output and turning that into I'm templatizing it now. So I'm sort of putting it inside of a template. The template here is state and city. Think of this as a little CSV template that, one could then feed into a Google Sheet or a spreadsheet or whatever it might be. And I'm basically saying, here's a very simple template just with a header row in a CSV, state, city, and then I'm just putting the comma separated values there. And if we gave it a different chunk of content that maybe had, multiple paragraphs or something like that, what it would do is if we gave it the instruction, it would just produce multiple multiple outputs that you could feed into a CSV or whatever you wanted to. So where is this relevant? I think this is particularly relevant where we want to take structured outputs and feed them into structured artifacts. So if you think about preparing, even something like an email generally has 2 CC, BCC, subject, body, 5 different fields there that we might have some unstructured information here in the chat trigger or whatever the trigger is, an automated trigger, a web form, whatever it might be. We feed it into our agent step, we give it the target schema, which is 2 CC, BCC, subject, body, and it has to do the job of producing that output. And then we could put that into a little template of our own, which the output of this little step, which is called a set or an edit field step, is we get to basically make a little template here of how we want to take the derived information, put it into an output template, and then at the other end, we get our clean output. So you can imagine things like reports, where you have a particular output format that you want, whatever it is, the topic, the summary, the author, the date, all of that kind of thing, where you want a consistent output. That's the key thing that's different about this is if we didn't use the structured output, I probably should have shown this, we would have got something different each time. It would have said the city is this, the state is this. You would never get a consistent output. And if you don't get a consistent output, it's hard to programmatically take that output and sort of process it in downstream steps. Does that make sense? So that's the key thing here is getting the structure in this JSON format, which if we look here, this is gold because this now lets us write normal code and do something with this. Now, this is normal software. This is back in normal software land. We've used the AI to take something that was unstructured and very difficult to work with in normal software and turn it into data, which now we can put this in a database, we can query it, we can do all sorts of cool things with this, just using normal approaches. The reason I wanted to share this today is I think there is a hell of a lot of value in just in this thing alone. Taking messy information from clients, from industries, from your own knowledge, from your history of bookmarks, from stuff that you're reading, putting it through what is, if we looked at OpenWriter now at what this costs us, you'll see it's fractions of a fraction of a fraction of a cent. So be able to iterate through a large amount of data, taking it and putting it through what could be multiple steps, remember? We could have this feeding into another one, and then producing out the other end something which now we've transformed into some valuable knowledge is, there's a lot of entrepreneurial opportunity just in this concept alone. So, yeah, have a little play with that, and then why don't we do a show and tell?
Can you show that edit fields? piece again, Chris?
Yeah. So edit fields, I'm just gonna kill it. You know, if I were to play this again here, let's try a different demo this time. Let's clear this.
That Namble.
Lost Namble. Yeah, so now I'm getting the AI agent output by hitting this and going to edit. What I can basically do is modify that and sort of put it into a template of some kind. The nice thing now is that because we've produced a structured output, remember if we didn't have a structured output, all we would have is just the word output or the key output and just a blob of text. It is a structured, we don't know what is the city, what is the state, but by doing this, we know that the LLM is reliably giving us those fields and we can then do something with them. So in this instance, I just did a simple little template, you know, which said, that's not what I wanted to do, sorry. That's dead. So, you know, I don't know, imagine this is like a little report or something like that, where we might say, you know, maybe it's in Markdown, it's heading 1, welcome to. And we might say, you know, city overview for city. And we might have had another field in there called description or something like that, you know. So now we had the state, we had the city, we had a description, which I could pull in here. So now what we're basically doing is we're templatizing that output into a new output. So if we execute that, getting this bit of markdown here. Welcome to California, city overview for Los Angeles, etc., etc., etc. You get the idea. Make sense?
Can you try a fictional city like Batman or something? I'm curious to see what it would come up.
Yeah. What state is Gotham City? I suppose New York, isn't it?
Yes!
That's impressive.
Look, the sky's the limit with this, and I'm probably doing it a disservice by showing it with a chat message here as the trigger. You know, I think probably a better example would be if we went back to what we learned last week and used a form trigger, and in the form we allowed someone to copy and paste a table, or you could upload a CSV. I guess no, not upload a CSV. If it's in a CSV, it's already likely to be structured. But you know, a better trigger would be something that sort of has unstructured information. I'm thinking here, you know, if you were to bookmark an article, let's say, and the structure that you wanted out of it was like something like, you know, key insights for my business from that article. But the key insights must be for my business, right? So what I'm going to have here in my my assistant message is going to be something like this. You know, you're a helpful assistant. Your job is to analyze articles that I read and synthesize the insights into the top 5 most relevant things for my organization. And then I'm going to have about my organization here. And I'm going to go to my, remember we did RAG, we learnt about RAG. We could have a tool there that goes out and gets information from a text file, or we could just bang it straight in here. I'm just going to go and get, my thing here, information about my organization. So let's have a look at what the structured output is that I want. I'm just going to get help. I'm going to go to ChatGPT. I need a JSON structure. No, I don't need help for this. So the key thing, let's call this say title. Remember, these are just examples that we're giving it when we do this, and then insights. In this instance, insights would be an array because we want multiple. We want 5 of them, in fact. So, and I'm just going to say here, I'm going to be lazy. I'm not going to put an actual insight in here. I'm just going to say insight 1. Insight 1, insight 2, etc. So okay, and then so it knows about my business, it knows the structured output that I want. So I can just go and grab an article now, which I'll probably want here somewhere. It'll be interesting. Let's clear this. This article in.
This for next year.
You can see what it's given us now. It's 5 insights from that particular article. Let's see if it followed. Top 5 insights for Bridge and Digital Hub from America is missing out on emerging talent article. See, it hasn't, I would have expected it to be a little bit more, I mean it is, it's talking about digital innovators, digital technology leaders, etc. So it has customized that to the hub. I mean, it was just a random article that I picked there. It wasn't necessarily relevant, but you get the idea, right? So why is that interesting versus just bookmarking stuff? Well, now it's bookmarking stuff, and it's summarizing and pulling out, teasing out insights. Of course, I read the article, but I didn't want to go and make notes on the article. So if I could have it make the notes for me, by understanding a little bit about my perspective, what I do, etc., it can go and pull out stuff that is probably pretty close to mine from what I would have made notes. Does everyone understand what we just did there? So all we really did was we gave our agent, so you can see here are the outputs. So this time it gave us an array, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We asked for 5 insights. It's given us an array. Now, of course, we could pipe this because we have a nice clean title. We have insights. We could now pipe this into a template. So let's just go back to our set fields node here, and you know, we could say
This is
insights.
one article, right? I didn't miss something, did I?
It was just one article.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just one article. Insights from, let's drag the title in.
Why don't you add a couple more,
Add a couple more.
just so we can see the output, so it's.
Oh, you want to do a few more?
Yeah,
Ah,
I just wanna see what.
All right, let me do this and then we'll,
Cause that's just one, so it's
Yeah.
underusing itself, what
Yeah.
you.
yeah, agree. Key insights for the hub, let's say. And then I'm just gonna list those out here. All right, so
Something completely different.
let's do a different article. Something I read recently that could be interesting. Let's go to the okay. GPT-5 and the new era of work. You can see the article here, so if I were to just go and grab that markdown, I'll quickly go to my editor here, paste that. Sorry, let's create a new file here. Paste that. It's not giving me a nice clean markdown, unfortunately. I've got a little bit of work to do to fix up that output format, but you get the idea. Okay, so now remember all of the things that we've learned over the last few weeks compound here, right? So I just banged those instructions into the AI agent. It could easily have had a range of tools here where, for example, if there were links in the article itself, it could use its web search tool and its web read tool to go and kind of find additional information. The prompt could have then fed into another agent, so go and find other related topics. You know, the sky's really the limit in terms of what you want to do here. But I think the key insight that I wanted to share today is once you learn this, you can really create more powerful workflows, because now we can take structured outputs and we can rely on the fact, particularly if we're using a good model, we can rely on the fact that we're getting a predictable set of fields and field names, which allows us to then do, you know, all sorts of things within n8n, but also things to do with our software. You know, because we know that coming out the other end of this is something that our software can expect. We know we're going to get a JSON object or a CSV object or something like that in a certain predictable structure, which means we can do all sorts of things with it.
Would I use a structure like this to take a form,
Yeah.
input from a form to feed into like a massive meta prompt? Or can you just feed that in directly?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, you know, I think the minute you're dealing with a form, you already have the opportunity to structure that right up front. You know,
So,
but let's say there was a chunky field in there where it was like tell us all about whatever,
Yep.
you know, rather than asking them, like giving them a million form fields to fill in with bullet points or whatever. So let's say it's a chunky field where they describe their business or whatever it might be. Yeah, that would be good to then put into a structured output thing. Or you might be asking for, what are the 4 things we need to know about this business, or
So the
what are their
steps-
products and services?
Yeah, it's exactly like that.
Yeah.
It's like, what's your field, run some analysis, and then feed that into like a pre-existing prompt. How would you, here's a form input.
Yeah.
Put that into structured output.
Yeah.
How would I feed that into like a big ass prompt that
So remember, if we had a form here and we were collecting, whatever, name, company, blah, 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 and then product and service description or something chunky like that. We only really need to process that one field. So if we think about downstream here, if we were to click on this edit fields node, you can see what we have is we actually have all the different fields available to us here. So what I mean by that is there would be one in here called form, okay? And that form would have the person's name, company, etc., the structured information that they put in there. So we would just be pulling that. We wouldn't be needing to put name, etc., into the AI action. We would just be skipping that with those fields and going straight to the edit field. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So think of this, I've only recently figured out a better way to kind of explain this, but think of what's going on here as you start at the beginning of these workflows with a very basic sort of JSON. Your form would just have name, company, and company description. There's only 3 fields to start with. Then what we're doing is we're putting the description field, this third one, into our agent here and asking it to produce a structured output that might have, say, 5 different output fields. So now we've got the 3 we started with, plus these 5 that we can now use in a downstream thing. You know what I'm saying? So in this one here, where we're sort of, manipulating the data we got, in the same way that I just went and dragged into here, I said,
so I'd have the prompt in there and then we just put in.
yeah, so look here, let's just imagine this was the form here. I could have had something like name, and then I would have just pulled that from the first step.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So as our workflow travels, basically what's happening is we're taking the initial JSON from the trigger and modifying it. You always have access to the original stuff that came in. Okay, so that's always available to you in these downstream steps. But with each step we do, we accumulate new information that we can use in the downstream step. But we never lose the previous stuff, we always have access to it. So in the case of a form, it was name, company, description. Name and company, we don't need to do anything fancy with, we already have them in structured format. So if we were going to put them into a template here, we would just be taking them straight from there, putting them in there. But we don't want that chunky, messy description here. We want to put that in here and ask this for 5 insights about the company. And we're going to pull out those structured outputs and use them here. So we'll have the original name, a company name, and then we're going to have the 5 things that we're going to use in our thing here. Does that make sense?
That output would be the fully tailored prompt, which I would then feed into Perplexity and away it goes.
You could do. So what you could be doing though is you could be prepping a prompt here.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. You could be prepping a prompt here. You would feed that into the next AI agent over here, and you'd be saying, below is information about the company. I need you to do X.
Yeah.
And what you've done is you've structured it in a structured prompt here, and it'll go and do what you want it to do. Yeah.
A slight variation on that which I've done, which works well with when the data gets complicated, is the prompt stays the same. It has like a data schema explainer in it, and it just points to the external data. So form comes in, data gets munged into like a more structured format. the prompt itself doesn't get modified, but it has, as I said, like a data scheme explainer, and then it has the prompt itself underneath it, which basically says, go and read this file, make sense of it in terms, from the perspective of the data scheme explainer, and then go and do this stuff. So you're basically keeping the data and the prompt separate all the way through the process. And when the data gets really complicated, that makes it a bit easier. Well, I found it made it a bit easier.
So you just use it like a templated prompt.
Yeah,
Rather
and so
than-
rather than having the form
Yeah.
data in the prompt,
Right.
it's pointing to the field
So just
in the
use
thing.
this, apply that.
Yeah, and it gives it the context, like, you'll tell it this this field means
Yeah,
this,
yeah,
this is how
yeah,
you should read that field. So if there's relationships
It's a cleaner
between the
way to do
field, at the fields, you can
Yeah.
also explain that in the schema.
Look, that's pretty much what I had. We've got half an hour. I thought it'd be great just to sort of wrap things up for a bit of show and tell. If folks in here have got stuff to show and tell.
So I just touched this one right now, using what you did, Chris.
It's a theory.
And well, it might be a useful example because it was pretty quick to do. So we provide consulting for retailers in like the running sector. So we have to have all the updated models that are coming out of like running shoes and things like that. So one of the people in our company also are providing all the social media content for a bunch of retailers. It's just like we need to know every time a new model comes out, everything that people are saying, reviews, what you use it for, what the price range is, what it compares with, everything. So, I mean, it's usually someone looking at that and making a summary and then putting it in a format like this. So what I did just now as a test was I went to the chat and I gave it, so I'll do it again. Save it. I gave it, what is it? What's happening?
Is the top one there with the links? The top chat message?
This one? Oh, well, here it should be there. So anyway, I just gave it a bunch of links, right? So link, another one. So I'm giving it 4, and I just wanted to process it and give me a summary. It's gonna look for pricing, it's gonna look for pros, cons, who this is for, who should use it, who should not use it, alternatives, and so on. So I just run it. It's searching, it has the Brave search tool, so it can search for all those and just finish right there. And so this is my output. This is it. This is the model, the Nike Vomero Plus. The price range is 2 out of 5, so it's pretty cheap. Base range, recovery, blah, 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 daily training, recovery runs. So anyway, that's the whole summary of 4 websites that are doing reviews. I guess you need to go and check if it's
So 4 websites with totally different content structure, talking about the products in totally different ways.
totally different. Like
Yeah.
these guys are, look at this. Okay, so there's pricing here and comments, text, whatever. They're all different. They're all very different. I just randomly chose them right now, but we know who the top reviewers are, so we'll just go get them.
Yeah. Can you show us your structured output format?
So what I did is here. So I already have this JSON format because we use it for something. So it's that I gave it that example, right? So this is another model. So that's the brand, that's the model, the price range. It has the alternatives here. Not recommended for, recommended for.
So this is your proprietary content format, basically.
this is my content, yeah, this is my format.
Yeah.
We send this into tools that we have.
And then can you show us, did you have to specifically prompt, for example, with the price range to explain what 3 versus 2 versus 1 was?
This,
Yeah.
yeah. So, wait, let's see if I.
Yeah, so you explained the schema here so that it has some information
Well,
about,
I did this, let me show, it's easier to show here, I guess. What I did was, no, not this one, sorry, it's gonna be one of these. Not that one. There you go, that's it. So, what did I say? I gave it what I had.
let's see, 10.
I just said, write the prompt for this, I want this, right? And then I just, back to the prompt, okay, this is what I did. Rewrite this in English, cause I was gonna show it now, so I wrote it in English, okay, there it is.
Appreciate
And then I said, I have this automation, whatever, blah, blah, blah.
So you screenshotted the automation to show it.
I don't know, ring a review for a running shoe as a text, and I identify price model, blah, 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 blah. Also, we should identify who this is not recommended for, make it very basic, this was just like me right now, just typing this. Help me write the prompt, so it gave me the prompt. And then I said, never mind, I asked for several inputs. Is this it? No, right here I just said, back to the prompt, I want the LLM to process several websites, because I had it for one.
Yeah.
And then I just went back and said, no, actually do it for several. And then, I mean, I haven't checked it, I just did it now, so I just used this prompt and gave it as a system prompt here. But it looks good, so. Oh, here's what you wanted to see, the price range, this is how it knows.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Geez.
Unstructured to structured, definitely.
But anyway,
There's two things I find very interesting about what you're showing us here, Ro, is the first one is getting an LLM to write a prompt for another LLM, right? I think that is so powerful, and often I even forget, like, hey, just stop trying to think this through, just get the LLM to write the prompt for you. The other thing is how good LLMs are at following a pattern in an example, right?
oh yeah,
So you didn't, if you look at your sort of example in the
Structured up.
structured output, right?
oh, the structure of it.
You gave it like just one single example,
Yeah.
right? Adidas, whatever,
Yeah.
The fact that it sort of figured out, look, that's what I'm being given, make this work for like a completely different type of shoe or, whatever. It kind of figured out
Yeah.
from that example, and I that is, to me, is so powerful, because you don't have to sort of reinvent the wheel so many times.
Yeah, my build on that would be, what you gave it here was the what.
Yeah.
So you gave it the what
Yeah.
here. Where, for example,
Oh, sorry.
the cost, the what is basically a triple, show it in dollar signs. The what is just a short set of uses here. But it would have to be a hell of an AI if it knew the how, if it could just derive that. And it could, I mean, it'll have a crack at it. But it's the system prompt that you created
Yeah.
that told it the how that you wanted those things produced. So the what is the structured output, the how is in the system prompt.
Yeah.
So just show us the price range in the system prompt, please.
So it's here, but it's not,
Oh, in your
the-
other prompts.
Yeah, in the actual system prompt, yeah. Just how you instructed it to give you to work that out.
Yeah, there. I think you had a little thing that said map.
Price range.
yeah,
the
this
dollars.
is, so, yeah, I just, reading it now, it needs more, like, it needs more, like, where is it?
You just have.
One up? Yeah, there.
There, price
Yeah.
range, map
Yeah.
to dollar.
Yeah, but see, it still doesn't have all the information, because this comes from, wait. The original one actually has this price range later. See, it actually tells it
Yeah, okay.
what it is. So that's what we actually use, like,
Yes.
but it skipped that, it didn't use it, so that's something that, I mean, looking into it, you go, like.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, so thanks, Ryan. So I think just to wrap it up, probably a couple of really powerful examples there, how you're interfacing. Nothing brings my heart more joy than to see like 5 or 10 ChatGPT tabs open simultaneously working. Like I said at the beginning of the sprint, your measure should be, I'm running out of credits. Like that's if you've got this bloody AI available to you, you've got Einstein in your basement, if you're not using it, you're not gonna make it. Like, use it as much as possible. Have 5, 10 tabs open, all working simultaneously for you. Use multiple LLMs. But I think another power tip you showed us there was you actually just took a screenshot of the n8n workflow. Of course, it's August 2025. I think the last training cutoff was just a couple of months ago. n8n's been around with AI for 2 years just about now. So the LLMs are well trained on n8n workflows and so on. So for you to just give it
The only
a
problem with that is that it mixes up the nodes, so because n8n seems to be changing the names of the nodes all the time. Right?
Yeah.
So it knows n8n pretty well, but
Yeah.
it usually gives you
Yeah.
names that you can't find them, so you gotta really.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't mean n8n so much, but I think that power
Yeah.
tip of take the screenshot, pull it in, its visual understanding now is so good for anything. Like if you find yourself stuck, it's an error, it's something you don't like, you've asked it to build a little website for you and the alignment's wrong, screenshot, bring it in, have it fix it. And then I think the real power example that Steve gave us there was to develop the literacies of being able to write or have an AI coding assistant write you little scripts is just, you really go to a whole nother level when you're able to do that. We're dragging and dropping stuff in n8n and it's cool, but we're quite constrained by what it can do. When you can say, make me a little script that does this or does that, it's just a whole nother level. So if we're up for that at some point in time, that's where I would love to get to. I'd love to get everyone to the point where they can say to a coding assistant, please make a little tool or a little script that does this for me, and be able to wire that into your workflows. That's like super, super powerful. It is a little bit techy and you do need some basics, but if you're up for that, we'll do that in a future sprint. I did sort of think we might get to it this time, but we haven't. And with that, that is the end of sprint 3. Thank you. Thank you very much to Lincoln in the back, who's been diligently recording these and removing personally identifiable information from the video recording. And thank you to Mia, who has been doing the barbecues each week. Please give her a little thank you when you pop up there. Vibe Camp this weekend, who's coming? Awesome. Yeah, very excited about that. I see the sun's out, which is a good sign. That's going to be a lot of fun. It's not too late. There's still accommodation available. You can just come for the day. It's family friendly. Bring the kids along. Think of it just as an outing to Boreen Point for the day. No pressure. It's just relaxed. Yeah, go forth and ping us on the AI channel with your little automation. Show us what you've been building.
Thanks, Chris.